Fox, Senior Reporter, PhocusWire, and I'm here with Peter O'Connor. He's Professor of Strategy at University of South Australia and also a Senior Analyst for Phocuswright. Welcome, Peter. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Linda. Good to see you again. Good to talk with you.
So let's start. We only got 15 minutes here. Scene setter kind of question is the direct trend in the past 2 years with COVID is for hotels to get as much business direct, and it seems it's been quite successful. So moving forward now, can hotels kind of nurture and continue to capitalize on that trend, or do you think OTAs are going to recover momentum?
Linda, I would say I'm absolutely certain that the OTAs are going to recover momentum. I think this trend that we've seen with the shift back towards direct booking it's been caused by two different issues. One is the change in the mix of domestic and international clients. So we've had a lot of people who are limited to traveling domestically or maybe even just regionally. And as a result, they've been contacting the hotels directly. They've been looking for safety and security information. And yeah, that's still going to continue. But as we get more international clients, you're going to see that that's going to reduce in terms of its importance. For me, I'm an Irish guy. If I wanted to book a hotel in Ireland, I would probably know which hotel I would want to book and I would be able to contact them directly. But if I'm going somewhere a bit more exotic, I don't have that knowledge. Now, can hotels actually try to capitalize on this trend? They need to do a lot more work than they're currently doing. People have been contacting them for safety and security information, and they've been sharing that over the phone and their websites. What we're starting to see now, of course, is that the OTAs are sharing that information as well. And a great example is Booking.com's new badge, which they're allowing hotels to apply for to certify that they are actually sustainable and behaving in an eco fashion. That's something that's very, very valuable, and it's going to eat away in terms of the advantage that the hotels had. So if they want to maintain this advantage, they're going to have to work much, much harder at reaching out to their customers.
Okay. So now from an OTA perspective, do you think, go back to their kind of old marketing tactics and pouring billions into Google?
That's an interesting question, because I think starting with Airbnb, but then Booking.com and Expedia as well, they've all said they don't want to go back to that.
Exactly.
What I've seen in the last couple of months is that they're starting to go back. They're starting to invest more heavily in paid search advertising again. And that's a big, big challenge, because the big winner in this is going to be Google. Google has... Yeah. We call it the Google tax, because effectively, if you want to acquire new customers, you're going to end up paying Google somehow, either directly through your own paid search marketing or through the OTAs, who have to reach out to their customers to actually do that as well. So I think we're going to get back to the same kind of situation where companies like Booking.com and Expedia are among Google's biggest customers across all sectors very, very, very quickly.
So we haven't learned anything then, have we?
Definitely not. We've said we've learned things, but it's easy to go back to the old ways. One of the challenges is there's very little originality happening in terms of travel marketing right now. There's very, very few new ideas. So what do? We fall back on the old standards.
Yeah. So, let's just talk about what might be those new ideas. We've seen some really clever use of social media. Companies like Hopper would say that, they don't invest, these billions in Google, but they use social media really effectively. Is that not something that you think we'll see the OTAs leaning more heavily on?
I don't think we'll see the OTAs leaning more heavily on it. I think we'll see the end producers, be they the hotel companies, the airlines, even tour operators, if they manage to recover, leaning more heavily into the social media aspects and all aspects of the customer journey. So from everything from the inspiration to the actual selection process, building up relationships with customers, and then allowing the customer to stay or complete their travel, and then maintaining contact with them afterwards. And the critical thing is maintaining that relationship, so when they need to do another booking, they come back to that supplier again. Now, it's a lot of effort. People have this impression that social media is easy and cheap and fast and so on. But in reality, it requires a lot of skill. It requires a lot of technical expertise and tools in order to make it work properly. So, travel suppliers that want to make use of this media, they're going to have to end up investing majorly in order to get it to work well.
So what about subscriptions then? You know, you talked about, loyalty there really, and also as a marketing tactic. Do you think that's going to catch on more?
Within travel, I think there's a big opportunity. We've seen with eDreams Audiogeo, they've been very, very successful in terms of what they've done over the last, 2 years?
2 million subscribers
really,
or something.
Yeah, and I call this, I would call it the Costco model, where basically you're getting people to pay up front and you're giving them something real and tangible in terms of maybe it's a discount, maybe it's special conditions and so on when they actually make their bookings. And we've seen in the retail sector, we've seen with Amazon Prime, that this is a way of tying people into your company. When you look at it at a very, very surface level, it looks like it's expensive. But in reality, imagine you're giving people a 10% discount. When you look at the customer acquisition cost that most companies are paying when they're driving bookings through paid search or through Metasearch, 10% is nothing. And of course, it's one shot when you actually do it through search, while when you have a subscription model and you tie people into your company, you can have them come back again and again and again. I was looking recently at the business model of Costco, and Costco has something like a 92% resubscription rate. So, they're definitely doing something right. And that's cash in their pocket up front before they sell anything. Yeah. I think we're going to see some of the hotel chains, some of the airlines come up with some very interesting ideas. During COVID, we saw some very interesting ones. We saw Citizen M, for example, with a package of a couple of days plus meeting space and so on. I don't think it even needs to include accommodation. What it needs to do is it needs to give the customer a reason to keep coming back to you again and again and again. And kudos to eDreams for being the first of the big travel providers or platforms to actually take the risk and put that together. And I'm very, very glad it's working out for them.
It's interesting that you say it wouldn't even have to include accommodation, because Accor Local, Sebastian Bazin has tried that, hasn't he? And he's trying again now. I mean, I don't know if it was too much too soon the first time round, but that idea of not perhaps including accommodation is interesting. You did mention Metasearch there. Now at the Phocuswright conference, there were some people saying, well, Metasearch is dead, but do you still see it as a very viable and growing form of marketing and distribution?
Well, Metasearch has got a new name. It's called Google. So Google
That's a
has
no
changed.
Then.
No, but I mean, let's be honest here. Google has changed its business model away from a CPC to a CPA, a cost per acquisition, and effectively it's Metasearch. And they're very, very smart here because it's much more attractive to travel suppliers because they only pay if it actually generates a booking, but they pay a substantial amount. So it reduces the risk for Google. That's great. Now, unfortunately, if you're a company like for example, like Kayak or somebody like that, it's going to be much, much more difficult for you to actually find your place where you've got Google before you and competing with you at the same time. So I think, the traditional travel Metasearch products, they're going to have to come up with something really interesting in order to actually keep their clients. Now, TripAdvisor has tried. TripAdvisor tried to go towards the subscription. They tried to go towards this cashback idea. All very interesting ideas, but it hasn't gelled with the customer. So there's some real innovation needed in order for these companies to actually maintain their business model and continue to be successful.
So are you seeing anything that might be kind of just emerging that could be a sort of, new and cool use of marketing for the future?
That's a really, really difficult question. I mean, I think we need to watch what's happening in retail in general. And retail in general is much further ahead than the travel sector for some reason. And when you start looking at, mainstream retail brands and companies like Amazon and Catch and so on, it's all about loyalty there. It's all about, customer lifetime value. It's not about single shot transactions. And that's really, I think, the way that we need to go. In the travel industry, we don't have loyalty programs. We have rewards programs. And to be honest with you, rewards programs that don't work very, very well. So I think somebody needs to figure out what's going to actually develop a real relationship with their customer base and implement something that will keep them coming back. You mentioned Accor with its All program. I think it's really, really interesting. As you said, maybe it was a little bit early. And the more I hear Bazin talking about the All program, I keep thinking about this idea of the mega app. So, you know, the WeChat
the super app
of travel,
strategy.
the super app. Yeah. I keep thinking of that idea. And, you know, Accor's got its finger in so many pies. There was even talk at one stage of investing in Air France. Maybe for the European marketplace, they could actually create something like that, which would reach out to customers in so many different ways that you effectively wouldn't have a choice except to actually participate in their ecosystem.
Yeah, well, actually, that's interesting because that brings me on to Booking Holdings and all of the acquisitions it's making. And again, you know, you're going to be hard put going forward not to cross over into its ecosystem. That's clearly what it wants. But are they in danger of getting too big now, do you think?
Well, Booking, as we already know, Booking is a very, very big company when you look at it as a proportion of the OTA market. But when you look at it as a proportion of the travel market, the overall travel market, it's not such a big company. And, you know, a large proportion, and I'm talking primarily here about Europe, which is Booking's kind of core market still, a large proportion of the market has been taken up traditionally by tour operators. And one of the things we've seen as a result of COVID is that the tour operator segment has really, really, really decreased. The traditional package tour. We had Thomas Cook, which went out of business beforehand. TUI, and you know,
he says they're going after dynamic packaging a lot more, doesn't he? So perhaps
that's exactly where they need to go. The traditional package, I think, is not going to come back. Being able to offer people flexibility. Now, is it going to be TUI that's going to do it, or is it going to be Booking.com that's going to do it? Booking.com now has the accommodation part. They have the flight component, which they've now brought in-house to reduce the strategic threat. They have things like OpenTable. They have some activities. You know, again, in terms of the super app of travel, they could possibly get there. So I think that makes sense. The Get a Room investment, I think, gives them a lot more leverage in the US and allows them to grow in the US market, where, you know, the Booking.com brand name has really been, you know, much lower than the Expedia, Hotels.com brand names, because they never invested in branding until a couple of years ago. Now, you know, is it too big? I don't think it's too big, because it's a small percentage of a very, very large market. And as I said, I think the place that they're going to take market share from now is not from suppliers, but they're going to take market share away from what we used to call the tour operating segment. If you start looking in markets like France, there are so many tour operators that have gone out of business. There's so many tour operators that are really, really struggling. And the ones that are being successful are the ones that, just like you said, focus on that dynamic packaging area, or else are extremely niche. And as a result, they're going to stay small.
Okay, let's move on here. Demise of cookies, you know, what kind of do you see emerging as a way of targeting customers online?
Well, I mean, to be honest, cookies are a fairly archaic technology anyway. The large marketing companies that want to target you can use other technologies like digital fingerprinting in order to identify you if they want to. So, you know, really, I don't think the demise of cookies is a big, big issue. The ones that have the skill and the tools to be able to target you will just switch to another technology. They're really the exceptions rather than the rule. The vast majority of the travel sector, the medium-sized and smaller companies, never used it in the first place. Now, what are they going to have to do? They've really got two challenges. They got to acquire customers the first time, and they got to bring customers back. And where the cookie component was really powerful was in terms of acquiring the customer the first time. targeted advertising, retargeting, targeting on Facebook, and so on. That's now gone. So what are these companies going to do? They're going to use the online travel agencies. That's why I'm so bullish on the online travel agencies, because I think the OTAs are going to be, once again, the demand collection media for many travel suppliers. Now, what the hotels and other travel suppliers have got to do much better job of is, once they've got that customer, making sure that they keep in contact with their customer, make sure that if that customer is going to come back, or if that customer is going to go on another trip, that they consider people within their brand or within their network. So I think we're going to see much more emphasis on online marketing, not the search component, but basic things like email marketing, which is horrendously effective still to this day, and what we talked about earlier on, social media marketing, maintaining, building, and leveraging the relationship with the customer.
Peter, it's a great way to end there. Thank you so much for your time. Peter O'Connor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.